There is one thing about the English language that took me forever to figure out. But once I figured it out, everything became much easier. Suddenly, understanding phrasal verbs, idioms, collocations stopped being so hard for me. So in this episode, I want to share with you this discovery that I had and how it can help you make better sense of the language. Trust me, this information will come in handy. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thiago here, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. In case you are listening to me for the first time, I've created this podcast and YouTube channel to help intermediate and advanced learners of English communicate with more confidence, more accuracy, more clarity, and more awareness. If this sounds like something you want for yourself and your English, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you get your podcast on, just follow the show so you don't miss a single new episode. Also, make sure you check out my pronunciation course. This is a course I've created to help you master the main sounds of the English language and the main connected speech patterns that you hear native speakers using all the time in fast spoken English. This course will help you speak with better pronunciation, better clarity and flow, and also will help you become better able to understand fast spoken English. To learn more about how you can take the course, link here in the description of the video, also in the pinned comment below. And if you are on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can find the link in the show notes of this episode. So I had this discovery years ago when I was still learning English more seriously and more intentionally. But it took me a long time to realize this. It was only after years of exposure to English that I realized on my own that this was a thing. And my big discovery was that the English language is a very sensorial language, meaning that a lot of the phrases, the expressions you see being used in English and the way native speakers use the words together in sentences, a lot of it appeals to the senses. It's very sensorial, all right? When I realized that, the language as a whole started to make more sense to me. All right. So let's break it down some more so that, you understand better what I'm trying to say here. Let's start by defining the senses. What are our senses? What are the senses we have in our body? Well, we have the visual sense, what we see. We have the auditory sense, what we hear. We have the tactile sense, what we feel when we touch it. We have the gustatory sense, our ability to taste things like food or drink in our mouth. We have the olfactory sense, which is your nose, your sense of smell. And we also have the kinesthetic sense. This is your ability to feel movement, physical sensation. It's something more kinesthetic. These are the senses, the main senses we have in our body. My discovery was that a lot of the English phrases and expressions that we hear native speakers using appeals to these senses, okay? So I'm going to list here some examples of visual metaphors first that can express abstract ideas. The English language is full of these expressions. So let's focus first on things that are more visual, that appear to our sense of vision. Let's take light and darkness. Listen to these examples. She was a ray of sunshine in his life. He was shrouded in darkness after the loss. The truth shed light on the situation. Can you picture the visual element of these expressions here? Can you picture that in your mind? She was a ray of sunshine. Picture a ray of sunshine. The sun emits UV rays, right? So think of a ray of sunshine. That's what it is, the literal meaning. But take that and apply that visual to the context of the sentence. She was a ray of sunshine in his life. What does that mean? She was the best thing in his life. She was the thing in his life that brought him happiness, hope, that made his life better. We can come up with many possible definitions here, but the idea is the same. She was a source of positivity in his life. Just like he was shrouded in darkness after the loss. When something is shrouded, it's covered and cannot be seen. So can you imagine darkness shrouding him in this sense, like covering him entirely? He was shrouded in darkness after the loss. So how was he feeling? Terrible. Hopeless. And then we have the truth shed light on the situation. Picture this. You wake up early in the morning. The sun is shining. You open up your curtains. What do you have? You shed light in a room. Yeah? You shed light in a room. And now there is light coming through the window. But you see, the truth shed light on the situation. The truth revealed important aspects of the situation. Okay? Now let's take the context of nature. Here are some examples of visual metaphors related to nature that the English language has. He was rooted in his beliefs. Her ideas blossomed. The company weathered the storm. Interesting, isn't it? Going back to the first one, he was rooted in his beliefs. Think of a tree. In order for a tree to remain still and standing, it needs to have strong roots under the ground, right? The roots sustain the tree. Now, let's picture that figuratively. He was rooted in his beliefs. So how do you think he felt about his beliefs? Wishy-washy? No, he felt very strongly about his beliefs. He was rooted in his beliefs. Okay? And then we have her ideas blossomed. During spring season, the flowers blossom. Right? The flowers open up and they become visible. They blossom. So her ideas blossomed. Can you picture that with me? Just like the company weathered the storm. Think of a boat or even a ship with sailors on it. And they are trying to deal with a terrible storm in the middle of the ocean. So they are weathering the storm. They are trying to get through that storm, survive that storm. That's the literal meaning. But here, the company weathered the storm. What can we understand out of this? That the company handled a difficult situation or had to manage a difficult situation. Some more examples. He was at a crossroads in his life. She embarked on a new career path. They reached the peak of their success. So, a crossroads is when you have two possible directions to take. You are on this road, and then you have a crossroad. Okay, a crossroads. So you can go right or left, and you got to make a decision. But he was at a crossroads in his life. He was in a moment in his life where he had to make a choice, either A or B. And it was an important choice. You see? Just like she embarked on a new career path. It's like you embark on a journey. You embark on a new career path. This sounds great. Or they reach the peak of their success. Think of a mountaineer, a person who climbs mountains. When the person gets to the peak of the mountain, the person is done with the hiking, right? So the peak of the mountain is the top of the mountain. But you see, they reach the peak of their success. You see, the peak of their success is the maximum ceiling they're going to get to. Got it? Some more examples. We have, he was brimming with confidence. This is a nice one as well. Think of a cup of coffee, okay? You have a cup of coffee, and then you start pouring coffee into it. If you pour the coffee into the cup, and you fill the cup up to its very limit, all right? And it's almost spilling. The drink is almost spilling out of the cup. This is brimming, okay? You fill the cup up to the brim, because the brim is the edge, right, of the cup. So right up to the limit. If you put a little bit more coffee on it, then the coffee would spill. Now, the figurative meaning, he was brimming with confidence. You see, he had so much confidence in him that it was almost like he was spilling confidence out of his body. Got it? He was brimming with confidence. You see the visual element here? This is amazing. What about this one? She poured her heart out. She poured her heart out. Again, going back to the drink, you can pour some coffee on the cup. You pour a drink, It's this act of, getting the bottle and pouring the drink inside the cup. But she poured her heart out. What do we understand by this? She gave it all, right? She gave everything she had. Maybe in a performance. Maybe she's a great singer. And in that performance, she pours her heart out. You see? No holding back. She gives all she has. And then we have the news shattered his illusions. When you shatter something, you break it into very small, tiny pieces. Like imagine you pick a rock and you throw it at a glass window. What's going to happen to the glass? The glass will shatter into tiny parts. But here, the news shattered his illusions. Can you picture that? The news shattered, completely destroyed into tiny pieces his illusions. Then we have physical states. For example, he was on top of the world. Can you picture that again? The visual metaphor? He was on top of the world. How do you feel when you are on top of the world? You feel great. You are on top of the world, right? And then we have, she felt like she was drowning in work. Drowning is when you can't swim, you don't know how to swim, and you are thrown in the ocean without a lifeguard with you or a life vest. Probably you're going to drown. You see, you're drowning in the ocean and then you're dead. But you see the figurative meaning here? She was drowning, or she felt like she was drowning in work. In other words, she had too much work to take on. She was drowning in work. Okay? The idea sparked his imagination. The idea sparked his imagination. Spark is the initial state of the fire. When you start a fire, usually you have a spark first, and then the spark turns into the fire. So the spark is usually the initial stage of something, in this case. So the idea sparked his imagination. It was the initial stage to get his imagination going. Even some animals, we have many phrases in English that use animals in them. For example, he was a lone wolf. A lone wolf. Think of a wolf. Picture a wolf alone, not hanging out with other wolves. A lonely, wolf. So a lone wolf. So if you call someone a lone wolf, you mean that that person doesn't like to be with other people. That person prefers to work alone. That person is not very much into being with large groups of people and keeps themselves to themselves. That is more of a lone wolf. Like, let me be. You guys do whatever you do there or whatever you want to do. Just let me be here. I'm fine. Okay? She was a social butterfly. A social butterfly is the opposite of a lone wolf. Think of a social butterfly. The butterfly is always flying around, right? Landing here and then flies around some more and lands there. It keeps moving around. Yeah, it keeps flying. So she was a social butterfly, talking to this person here, then talking to that person there, hanging out with those people over there. You see a social butterfly, right? And they were like two peas in a pod. Two peas in a pod, all right? Pea is a vegetable. It's that little green rounded vegetable, and they usually grow in pods. And one pod carries many peas inside. And the peas, they look the same when you open the pod, you know? So when you say that two people, for example, are like two peas in a pod, you mean that they are very similar to each other. They are practically the same, like two peas in a pod. All right? So these are some examples of how visual the English language can be. But English doesn't only have visual metaphors. It also has other metaphors that appeal to the other senses. Let me give you some more examples. What about auditory metaphors? Listen, her voice was like music to his ears. Nice, right? In other words, her voice was so beautiful to him. Or the silence was deafening. If you call a noise, for example, deafening, you mean that it's so loud that it risks getting you deaf. When you are deaf, you cannot hear. A deaf person can't hear. So the silence was deafening, like it was really uncomfortable. The silence was really uncomfortable. Can you picture that? And then he was bombarded with questions. Bombarded. Think of a person being bombarded by something and the noise, boom, 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 you know? Got it? You see the visual again we have here and the auditory sense as well. He was bombarded by questions. So how many questions do you think he got? 1? 2? No, a lot, right? What about tactile metaphors? For example, the idea was rough around the edges. The idea was rough around the edges. When something is rough around the edges, this means that the edge or the edges of something are not smooth or linear or, let's say correct. They are rough. All right. For example, think of a piece of log, that you cut down from a tree. And depending on how the cut happened or which instrument you use to cut the tree down, you might have the edges kind of uneven. They are not really, let's say, symmetrical. So they are rough around the edges. That's the literal meaning here. But when something is rough around the edges, it means that it's not perfect. In this context, the idea was rough around the edges. Yes, it was a good idea. It had potential, but it wasn't perfect. It needed to be polished. And you can also use this expression to talk about people. For example, oh yeah, he's a great guy, but he's a little rough on the edges sometimes. In other words, he needs a little bit more polishing. Maybe he's too blunt or too aggressive in the way that he communicates. Maybe he needs to be a little bit more, let's say, polite, or learns a little bit more social skills to communicate more effectively. You see, he can be a little rough on the edges or rough around the edges. Got it? And then we have, she had a smooth conversation with the client. So something smooth is something that is not rough. It's the opposite of rough. It's smooth, like silk, So she had a smooth conversation with the client. So it was a conversation that was okay, right? Everything happened according to plan. There were no hiccups, no problems. It was a smooth conversation. All right? And then he felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Think of your spine here, your backbone, right? When you feel scared, for example, and the adrenaline in your body raises, what happens? You feel a cold shiver down your spine. When you shiver, you shake a little bit, like that, So he felt a cold shiver down his spine. Okay? This expression can be used when you are afraid of something or even when you are super excited about something. Something can be so exciting and fun that you might feel a cold shiver run down your spine because you're so excited. Okay? The adrenaline is up there in your body. Okay? Now, what about the taste metaphors? We have the news left a bitter taste in his mouth. Something bitter is something that is the opposite of sweet. Okay? And it's not a real pleasant taste. For example, I love to drink black coffee with no sugar. I've been drinking coffee without sugar for years now, so to me, that's great. But I know that for a person who is not used to drinking black coffee without sugar, the taste at first is going to be bitter to that person. The person is going to go, oh man, this is just too bitter. Ugh. So, the news left a bitter taste in his mouth. So, how did he receive the news? How did he take the news? Well, not really. And probably the news was not so pleasant. Got it? And then we have his words were sweet, but his actions were sour. Right? Think of a lemon. If you pick a lemon and you bite into it, the taste you're going to feel is a sour taste. It tastes really sour. Okay? Like acid. So his words were sweet, but his actions were sour. Pretty obvious, the meaning here, isn't it? She savored the moment of victory. She savored the moment of victory. When you savor food, you take your time appreciating that food. Like, think of a very nice glass of wine, and you don't chug it like you drink tequila, for example, like that, but you savor it. You smell it. You take a sip of it. You see? This is savoring the drink or savoring some food. So, she savored the moment of victory. She was really in it, right? Really experiencing and enjoying that moment to the fullest. About your smell, right? Your smelling sense. Something fishy was going on. I don't know. That guy looks fishy. I think something fishy is going on there. Think of a fish, okay? Think of the smell of fish going bad. How does that smell? Fish going bad. It doesn't smell pleasant. It doesn't smell good. So if you say that somebody looks fishy, that person looks suspicious, or something fishy is going on there. I wouldn't go there if I were you. Like, there's something suspicious going on there, maybe something illegal or wrong or dangerous, Keep your distance. The air was thick with tension. The air was thick with tension. Think of a thick book, right? Like a 1,000-page book. That's a thick book. Okay, but the air was thick with tension. So there was a lot of tension in that environment. It's really cool, yeah? To picture the visual element and then making better sense of the figurative meaning. He caught a whiff of success. When you catch a whiff of something, you smell it, but you smell it very quickly, like that, like that's a whiff, So he caught a whiff of success. So he enjoyed success for a little while, maybe for a short period of time. It was just a whiff. Okay? And talking about the kinesthetic sense, we have he was weighed down by his responsibilities. He was weighed down, you see? Weighed down by his responsibilities. How do you think he was feeling? Overwhelmed, right? Or the project gained momentum. The project gained momentum. Momentum is a term in physics to refer to when there's an object moving at an increasing speed. And the faster it becomes, the faster it moves, the harder it is for it to be stopped. Okay? It just gains traction and just goes, right? So the project gained momentum. Can you picture that? It started growing so fast. It started to expand so fast that it became impossible to stop it. It was inevitable. That's it. It's gaining momentum. It's growing exponentially. Okay? She felt a wave of nausea. You can say nausea or nausea. It depends on the speaker, really. So you see, she felt a wave. Think of a wave in the ocean, on the beach. She felt a wave of nausea or nausea. Like, I'm not feeling so good. Got it? So these are all expressions in English that are sensorial. They appeal to our senses. We also have emotional metaphors. For example, his heart was heavy with grief. His heart, let's picture, right? His heart was heavy with grief. Grief is what you feel when, for example, a loved one passes away. When you lose someone close to you, you feel grief, right? You lament the fact that that person is no longer in your life. So his heart was heavy with grief, okay? Or she was bursting with joy. Bursting is like exploding, right? Can you picture that? She was bursting with joy. She was so happy. Or he was burning with anger. He was burning with anger. Can you picture a real person literally burning with anger? Can you picture that? You see? These are all sensorial metaphors that we have in the English language. So when I made that discovery, the language started to make more sense to me. It became easier for me to understand expressions, collocations, phrasal verbs, because I would picture the literal meaning in my head first, or the visual meaning first, or the sensorial meaning. And then out of that, I would make sense of the figurative meaning that the speaker was implying there. Okay? Of course, this is one aspect of the English language. The English language is a real rich language, okay? This is not all about that, all right? So yes, I would say that this sensorial aspect of English, language that appeals to your senses, is really prominent in the language, but it's not the only factor of the language. We also have, for example, abstract language in English. There is abstract language, and there is also language that is influenced by cultural aspects or historical aspects, okay? But my point in this episode today is to show you how visual, how sensorial the English language can be. So now I want to encourage you to, as you listen to a podcast, as you maybe listen to a song, watch a movie or TV series in English, be on the lookout for these kinds of expressions that are really visual or really sensorial, these metaphors, because they are really, really common. All right? Guys, that's all I have for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed learning more about this discovery that I had about the English language, and I hope that you found it useful. Don't forget to learn more about my pronunciation course, link in the description and also in the show notes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I'm Thiago. I'm signing off. Thank you so much. I'll be talking to you very soon in the upcoming video. Bye-bye.